All right, let's chat about San Diego's roster ahead of this regular season kicking off on March 25th. There are some teams that still have to kind of narrow down those preseason
Mhm.
rosters. It has to be under a certain number. And I think San Diego at this point is where they want to be. I don't know if we're gonna see any other movement or any other players waived or added on through waivers or anything like that, because as of now we're maybe looking at around 25 to 26 players. Initially Telford, for example, was listed in their preseason roster, but she has announced her retirement. But the goalkeepers, we know Kaylin Sheridan's in the mix, we know Lauren Brixey out of the draft is in the mix as well. Let's take a look at maybe some of the forwards. Maybe we haven't talked about them enough. We've been talking about the midfielder a lot, but Amira Ali, Mackenzie Doniak has made a return, another player through free agency for them. Sophia Jakobsen, Alex Morgan, Jaden Shaw, Rachel Hill, and Melanie Barcenas, who was a U18 non-roster invitee. So might not see her. She might be one of those players that we might not see in the regular season. But some of the other midfielders that we didn't get to shine some light on. We haven't chatted too much about Belle Bridie, Taylor Korniak, Kelsey Turnbull, Emily Van Egmond, who was massive for them in
Yeah.
their inaugural season. We've mentioned Dory Howard, Colaprico, Enge, but Giovanna DeMarco also through the draft as well to kind of round out the midfielders and defenders. Abby Dahlkemper, Mia Gayu, and then Naomi Girma, Kristen McNabb, Madison Pogarch, Kaylee Reel, Shane Shorts, and Kristen Westfall. So we always love to talk about defenders, but I do want us to shine some light on the forwards a little bit because Lisa, we were chatting, or you mentioned the World Cup year, the international cycle. There's likely to be some players missing, but there's also some players who are going to want to try to utilize this time in the league to make sure that they are primed and ready to go for their World Cup. And I think when we're looking at these forwards, when we see somebody like a Jakobsen, we see somebody like an Alex Morgan, these are probably the players that might stand out the most to us, who we might see on opening day.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of look especially at those forwards because there's a lot of depth there and there's a lot of international experience and there's a lot of what we saw last year from them. I mean, when you're running through this list of names, Sandra, for those that maybe didn't tune in so much last year to the NWSL season, there is the Rookie of the Year on
Oh,
this roster. There's Defender of the Year. Heads up, they're the same person in Naomi Girma. There's Goalkeeper of the Year in Kaylin Sheridan. There's a Golden Boot winner in Alex Morgan on this roster. There's also Young Female Player of the Year for U.S. Soccer in
yeah.
Jaden Shaw on this roster. Giant awards and accolades given to people on this roster. Casey Stoney, a candidate for Coach of the Year on this roster as well. There's just a lot of big names, and I think those big names and those big accolades and big awards come with big expectations for this type of team. But I think when you look at this forward front line, the consistency we saw last year between an Alex Morgan in that front line, a Sophia Jakobsen towards the end of the year, Amira Ali. I think that Ali was one of the players that had an incredible growth throughout 2022 that really solidified herself in the starting lineup and solidified what she could do for this side, and the continuity that we saw and the relationship between a Jakobsen, an Ali, and a Morgan developed throughout this year was fantastic. Mackenzie Doniak kind of solidified her role as that super sub that came off the bench and contributed and brought a spark to 60 minutes, 45 minutes of the game. I think that is where we could continue to see Doniak throughout this year. And when I look at the new additions of someone like a Rachel Hill, I think that would be similar to kind of the role we saw Katie Johnson in last year, where it was like a double super sub after Doniak came in around the 45-minute mark or the 60-minute mark. Then we see someone like a Rachel Hill come in around the 70-minute, 80-minute mark to kind of close out game and continue there. This is a lot of depth in the forward front line. I mean, Alex Morgan, right? You're a Golden Boot winner. We just talked about the FIFA 23 rankings. She's up there on them. It's top competition that you're playing with in that front line. I think that the defenders we also have to look at a little bit because Abby Dahlkemper, a center back that dealt with a lot of injury last year. She went
Yeah.
through surgery, now her development to come back and play in this year is going to be interesting to see how she can stay healthy. And that's really hard and that's really tricky to do. But we saw Naomi Girma come in, the number 1 draft pick in 2022, and not only solidified rookie of the year, but defender of the year. And she took over the leadership in that back line as soon as Abby Dahlkemper was out. And she played alongside someone like a Kaylee Reel in that center back position. And I really liked that duo. I really did, because Kaylee Reel was one that allowed a young Girma to shine and take on that leadership role. And I think that's why San Diego was able to be so good defensively. I mean, of course, and then you've got Kaylin Sheridan in goal, so that'll help you be really good defensively as well.
No, I'm with you. Listen, I think I tweeted something out the other day after attending Red Stars Media Day locally, and just sort of hearing things coming out of their media day, and they have a number of players who are working their way back into form, whether it's from injury or maternity leave. And we're talking about San Diego, and we're currently speaking about Abby Dahlkemper, and it's almost like I believe in my tweet I said something along the lines of like, if you go across every team in the league, it's like you can almost pluck out some sort of comeback storyline for a player on almost any team in the league. And I'm with you in terms of, what was his offseason like for someone like in Abby Dahlkemper. She got shut down in the season and had to have what she referred to as like a very long and overdue surgery. So after she went through her process to sort of go through that and sort of write out her back and her neck and everything, and those are kind of like very scary, kind of tricky injuries to navigate. I'm looking across the board at some of these players, and how are they going to look in 2023 now that they've had some time to listen to their bodies, and give themselves the appropriate treatment, or take that significant time off or time away. So I think that's a player to look at. I think for San Diego Wave as they jump into their regular season. We saw Girma step up in ways that I don't think folks were really anticipating.
It was so cool.
I mean,
so cool
we
to watch
watched, we watched the arrival, of Naomi Girma, and stepped up in a multitude of ways for this San Diego Wave team, and because of her level of play, has been a constant feature in some of these national team camps, right? And is really in the conversation of a potential World Cup selection for that final roster. So when we're looking at the Wave, there's a number of players that may be absent, that might open the window of opportunity for other players on the roster to get in. But I also think that also leaves the window of opportunity for those players who are in the process of building their minutes or trying to make that comeback, to get those consistent minutes. So whether it's a Dahlkemper on the defensive side of things, or it's like an Amira Ali in the attacking line. I'm excited to sort of see those pockets and windows of opportunity in the schedule for a team like San Diego Wave, just because of the minimal turnover that they had on their roster in the offseason. What is that next step going to look like for a number of players on this team, right? So when we're talking about players that we might want to see in the starting 11 or in the schedule during those windows of opportunity, we're also looking at like the roster and who is going to be the young prospect to have an impact for this team, and who is going to be like that experienced veteran that the team relies on a bit in light of a World Cup year, in light of potential absences during the middle of the season. So, of course, for young prospects, shocker, we're going with Jaden Shaw. We want to see more. It's almost like we were just given a brief glimpse, right, at what Jaden Shaw could do for this team. Just needs very little, minimal time to get in and make an impact for the team in the attack. And listen, also brought the celebrations as well. I love
Yeah,
the goal celebrations out of
the
Shaw.
surfboard. There's a little bit of surf in the wave celebrations coming from Shaw. Yeah, how can this not be our young prospect to watch? It'll be her second year in the league, which gives her, I think, a leg up on maybe some of the other rookies, despite being very young. She won United States U.S. Soccer's Young Female Player of the Year award last year, and as you mentioned, did not take long for Shaw to get adjusted and get acclimated, not only with the NWSL but with San Diego. In her first game, she gets onto the pitch and scores a goal pretty immediately. It was incredibly fun to watch. But now I want to see her take that next step. I think so often we put a lot of pressure on young players, whether they're the number one draft pick or they've been to a youth World Cups and they've had a lot of experience and kind of all the pomp and circumstance that comes around these young players. But when they perform as high as a player like Jaden Shaw did last year, we want to see them continue to grow and continue to become those incredible players that we know that they can be. And that's what I want to see from Shaw. Take that next step, have maybe a bit more of a consistent role in this roster and in Casey Stoney's squad, whether that's pushing her way into the starting lineup. I think we could see that at moments, especially when we kind of come into those World Cup weeks when there's a lot of players out, international windows that she sticks around for and she's still with the squad, maybe during the Challenge Cup. But I want to see growth from Shaw and a lot of consistency with her in the front line. And I think it would be fun to kind of see Shaw partnered up with an Alex Morgan, a Jakobsen, and see kind of how those sparks fly and the fireworks go off.
Yeah, I want to see the the young prospect with some of those experienced veterans. I would like to even see her alongside someone like an Amira Ali with when maybe that when like those Challenge Cup windows kind of come into play and sort of see how they combine and connect and continue to develop chemistry with each other. But some of those experienced veterans we're talking about, a Jakobsen or a Morgan, are likely to be absent. Let's just say that they've got good possibilities of heading to a World Cup, but it's for those reasons that we're looking across this roster and trying to see who is that experienced veteran that this team might rely on in light of those moments. And we're actually going to go with Kaylee Real in this moment. We wanted to stick with a defender because, of course, that's what we do here at Attacking Third. But this is a player who had a really good season, I think, with San Diego Wave last year and during their inaugural run there. But this is also someone who has spent time in the league, knows what it is to try to keep things organized in the back. And I think when you're looking for some of that seasoned veteran experience, you might try to look at that back line just because of their vision and their whole perspective
Right.
of the pitch and how things go. In the lines in front of them. So
Yeah.
I would anticipate that somebody like Real is going to step up in light of leadership that might be absent in those World Cup stretches.
That expectation is very on par because we already saw Kaylee Real step up last year with the San Diego side. The starting center backs were Naomi Girma and Abby Dahlkemper. That was it. And those roles are very hard to shake up, barring any injuries that happen. Unfortunately, Abby Dahlkemper did deal with injury last year. We know she ended up getting surgery. And because of that, Kaylee Real stepped right into that center back role seamlessly, I'm also going to say. I think that we even saw, because Dahlkemper was dealing with injury, but also because Real did so well in that center back role. When Dahlkemper was coming back and there were moments when she got in there, it was almost like we preferred to see Real alongside Girma in that center back instead of Dahlkemper for a number of reasons. But I think when we look ahead to the World Cup year and how there are going to be a lot of absences, we'll talk about the international players, but six starting players going to be gone. One of them being your goalkeeper and your captain on this team. That's when it allows room for someone like a Kaylee Real to step up and step in. And I think that she really made that known last year to Casey Stoney that Real is a player that this team can lean on. And now as we enter this year and she continues to grow as a player, she's only 25 years old. Like she's still pretty young, but if she can already be that veteran and that leader on the pitch, that'll do wonders for Real's career and it'll do wonders for San Diego and the points that they can pick up during international windows.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in terms of an international spotlight, there's a possibility that, like many of the other clubs, San Diego is going to be without a handful of players, because we're not just looking at the United States women's national team side of things. We're looking all across the board. There are a lot of players in this league who are World Cup bound, and
Mhm.
may likely miss a significant chunk of the season representing their respective nations. When we're looking at San Diego Wave, you got to start with one of their most important players in Kaylin Sheridan, who will likely be representing Canada in the World Cup. Sophia Jakobsen with Sweden is another attacking piece for them. And then there are also the potential for U.S. players. Alex Morgan, who has had extended time with national team camps, who has multiple World Cups at this point in her career. But Taylor Korniak is a young player who has spent time in national team camps and is still in the mix of Vlatko Andonovski's rosters leading up to the World Cup. And Naomi Girma has really bursted on to the scene in the program, really bullied her way into the conversation of and defender going to the World Cup. There's some hard decisions, I think, for Andonovski making that final roster. But you were talking anywhere from 4 to 6 players who
Yeah.
may be absent for this team. I mean, I think if you're the Wave and you say, well, maybe Korniak doesn't go. If you're following the Wave, you're like, that's a win for club,
Oh, that's a massive win.
You're like, yes, that's going to be great for us. But at the other side of things, if as excited as you are to see somebody excel and succeed, somebody like a Girma who might be absent, that's going to be a big hole for them.
Yeah, I think that's really what you have to look at. It's hard to sometimes separate your international feelings from your club feelings because, I mean, Caitlin Sheridan, like she doesn't have that many caps with Canada. She's only at 34, which is like it's still incredibly impressive. But as a top goalkeeper of the year contender and winner, that's a big loss for a San Diego side as well. But then I know you talked about the handful of Americans that could be attending the World Cup. You look at someone like an Alex Morgan, 204 international caps, 121 goals for the United States. And then there's a Naomi Girma who just got onto the national team in 2022. She got her first cap. And from there, she never looked back. 14 caps with the United States. And then someone like a Taylor Korniak, only 12 caps. But this is a player that has kind of become Vlatko Andonovski, the United States women's national team head coach, go-to in that midfield. So I think when you're Casey Stoney or a San Diego fan, you have to look at this roster and think, where can we get depth from? And the fact that you're potentially losing some incredible attacking pieces in Jakobsen, Morgan, and Taylor Korniak. I'm throwing her into that mix. It's really good that they got depth in someone like a Rachel Hill, a Maggie Doherty Howard in the midfield, a Danielle Colaprico in the midfield. That's going to help them so much as they continue to move forward. They're going to lean on players like Amira Ali, Doniak, Jaden Shaw throughout those World Cup windows, because this is a lot. I mean, teams in the NWSL, they're losing a lot of players, but to be losing 5 or 6 of your starting players that aren't just starters, but like award winners from the
Yeah.
previous year, it's a big loss. That's a big knock.
Yeah, we can't act like it's not. It is. And you know what? We've done the off-season overview. We've chatted about how they navigated that. We gave them a grade. Second year for Casey Stoney to build with this team. Some new additions, but really a lot of usual suspects at this point for San Diego. So what is the biggest burning question for this team as they head into the 2023 regular season? Is it just, can they get back to the playoffs, or can they get back and actually break through into the final?
I think it's a good question because the expectations last year for this team maybe weren't as accurate as they could have been, and the fact that San Diego blew those expectations out of the water by really finishing at the top of the table, hosting a first round playoff game, and then falling to Portland Thorns, who go on to win the NWSL championship. I think there was some disappointment from San Diego inside the locker room, right? They wanted to continue and move on and to win. Meanwhile, the fans, I think, were pretty happy with that result and how the season ended. They end up getting Snapdragon. They get a couple sold out games. But for you and I, we want to set the bar high. I want the San Diego team to get through to the final, break through in their second year in existence. They've got a lot of the similar pieces they did last year. Now they can build on that. Casey Stoney already has a foundation down of what she wants from her team, how the system of play, how they're going to play throughout the year. I think it's not too much to ask to get them back to the final. If anything, at least to be hosting a playoff game, right?
I'm with you. I think the moves that they made in the offseason address those specific needs and address them in a way that's going to make them better. We talked very briefly about Emily Van Egmond, and she was someone who worked very hard in the midfield for this team. But this is also a player that might be absent for San Diego. Spending time with the Matildas in Australia. So I think the addition of Colaprico, I think, is going to give them an X factor, a bit of an X factor that I don't think people are actually prepared for. When we looked at that free agency list, we said from the jump, Debinha is the prize, right? But I'm in the camp that San Diego got the absolute best defensive midfielder in the free agent market when they got Colaprico. So this concept that is out there right now, like on the national team level, about like who's the six and like why can't we produce sixes and where's the six? They exist. Some of them are actually playing in the NWSL. Colaprico is one of these players who has spent time with the national team. She's not necessarily in that picture anymore, I think, because of some other things like injuries that she has had to navigate along the way. And we'll just if it quacks and looks like it, we'll just call it a duck. Colaprico doesn't fit people's stereotypical profile of a defensive six,
which is crap. But
crap, right? Because she's like short, but it's like I've had the opportunity to watch Colaprico play live many times in many of her seasons with Chicago, and I have seen this player get hops on Sam Mewis, who's like 6 feet tall, and get called for the foul the other way. It was just funny. It's just funny moments. But I think they have enough pieces. They chose the right pieces to target, and I think Casey Stoney and what she's building for year 2 might have those key differences, and those key differences might be the thing that breaks them through. So I'm with you. I think in terms of a projected finish, they're gonna be a top 4 team. I think they're gonna host another playoff game.
Yep.
Who knows? Maybe it's gonna be a straight bye to the semifinal.
I think that's an expectation that San Diego wants, and that's an expectation that they have for themselves. I would not be surprised if they're a 1 or 2 seed at the end of the 2023 season. And you just talked about it. I think an X factor, Colaprico in the midfield for sure, but in the landscape of the NWSL, Casey Stoney is an X factor. Because she has just the way that she assembles a team and a roster and the way that she can put pieces on the pitch. I mean, putting Korniak, who was formerly a midfielder. She's played forward, she played in the back line, but coming out of Orlando, she was a frontline player, and dropping her back into the 10 role as the attacking center mid underneath an Alex Morgan was a game change for this San Diego squad, and that is what brought Taylor Korniak into the national team picture. And that was all had to do with Casey Stoney. Of course, the players are executing. I'm not taking anything away from Korniak. It's been so fun to watch that player throughout last year develop, get called into the national team, solidify her spot, change the structure of the national team for the United States and how they're playing. But it all stems back to Casey Stoney and what she's able to do. And I think expectations should be high for this team because our projected finish is high for them. Make the playoffs, potentially host, potentially get a first round bye. Top 4 seed for me is San Diego.
Prove us right, San Diego, because we love to come back and chat about that when we get the chance. But that's a wrap for San Diego's preview.